All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with a new setup and hopefully better audio, which I am very excited about. I've been meaning to upgrade my computer for a very long time, so I finally did it. And I also messed with my audio, so let me know if my mic sounds better, sounds worse. Let me know if you hear any weird sounds like my computer fan, anything like that. I'd appreciate the feedback. I've been trying to make it sound as good as possible. And aside from that, Bitcoin has just gotten a pretty large blue candle that popped up on my screen, so let's talk about that. So first, in my last video, I mentioned this area of resistance right here. We had confluence at the time with the golden pocket from this high down to that most recent low, and that aligned with the value area low that I've been watching, the value area low of the range since all-time high. I've said that probably 100 times by now, so I'm sure most of you know what I'm talking about. And we did get a temporary rejection from that area. I did not take any shorts from there. There wasn't really great short setups on most time frames. Things were still looking pretty decent, like the 4-hour momentum and money flow were still putting in higher highs. And I also mentioned these anchored VWAPs. These anchored VWAPs from that high that I pulled the golden pocket from, and also this high, because this wick went higher than this wick over on Binance, but on Bybit it did not. So we have two highs to really look from. And I pulled anchored VWAPs from both of them. They're basically in the same spot. They form this little, zone of an anchored VWAP. And I mentioned that was an area I was interested in, but really only if we got a retrace prior to hitting this zone, because I wanted to target that from any potential longs from that area. We did not retrace prior to hitting that zone, though. So, I wasn't really looking at these anchored VWAPs at all. I was more so looking at some other things. And, we did fall through those anchored VWAPs a little bit, but we have since recovered them again. In a way, we kind of retested them for support, even though we fell below them. We also, retested some support in this previous range back here. And now we have gone on to put in a higher high. We're back above the value area low. Looking at the 4-hour right now, we have 12 minutes and 54 seconds until the 4-hour candle closes. So I may actually just stay on this recording until that happens. I'm very interested to see if we will get a 4-hour close above not only the value area low, but also this most recent higher high. If we can continue this uptrend and, sustain above the value area low, I think that gives a pretty good chance at reaching for some higher targets, like the high of this sideways range that we're trading in. But I also have to consider the possibility of, all right, well, what if this becomes a failed attempt at continuing an uptrend above a very significant point? What if we end up SFPing that high? And then what if we end up losing the value area low once again? I think something like that could indicate that we are yet again holding resistance on this very important point. So I am paying attention to how things develop here. And in the meantime, I'm looking at market Cipher, and I'm seeing conflicting signs. I'm seeing things look pretty bullish at the moment. Just considering, the most recent developments. I mean, we're seeing a 4-hour green dot momentum turning to the upside, VWAP turning to the upside very aggressively, and money flow going on to put in higher highs. However, I also see the potential for bearish divergences here. We have put in a higher high, yet momentum at the moment is much, much lower than where it was at when we were back up at this point previously. So this definitely has bearish div potential. But, just looking at the 4-hour alone, the money flow is not agreeing with that divergence. It's really only momentum. Now, before I go down in time frames, let's actually start on the weekly. Let's take a look at the weekly time frame, because right now we do have a green dot. Now, something we have to consider is we've had plenty of green dots on this weekly time frame recently, and all of them gave very lackluster moves, you can say. I mean, this back here was a very aggressive pump. We almost got back up to all-time high. I mean, it was a basically range rotation. We got up to the high end of the range. It didn't exactly come up to the high or even some of these significant resistances that I was looking at, but it did give a very aggressive move. This green dot, which actually printed on this candle right here, also gave a pretty aggressive pump, but, the thing to keep in mind is that all of these have been lower highs. So based on this pattern, we could think that, okay, maybe we print a green dot on the weekly time frame just to make another lower high. So there is that to consider. But one difference you could say here, at least from this last green dot, is as this last green dot printed, money flow was moving to the downside. And as this one printed, we can see that money flow is starting to curve back to the upside a little bit. Now, money flow is also moving to the upside during that first green dot that we got below the 0 line. And I mean, that first one was more of an aggressive move than the second. But regardless, I am still looking at this weekly green dot with some skepticism, because we've seen a lot of failed green dots, a lot of failed weekly trigger waves. And the daily time frame also has a green dot on it. But money flow looking a bit iffy, like it's moving to the downside still. If we kind of try and look at the big picture of the money flow, we had what I would call, a reset of the money flow. It came into the red, it stayed in the red for a while, and then it got a decently aggressive move into the green. It put in higher highs, at least locally, compared to these previous waves in the green. But that was not really sustainable. It fell back into the red and is currently still putting in lower lows. You could look at this with some optimism and say, all right, well, maybe we put in like a trigger wave of sorts with money flow, a higher low showing direction, and possibly that could point to more of a sustained move to the upside, but it is certainly too early to tell just off the daily time frame, I think. And with the way it looks right now with money flow continuing to move lower, and also considering the lower time frame context, which I will go over in a second, I am definitely looking at this as, all right, well, we're seeing conflicting signs at a very important point. We are at a very important decision point. This value area low, I think, is the gate that Bitcoin needs to get through before it can start reaching for higher targets, like this range high, like the point of control, and then like the value area high, or even all-time high. And I already went over the 4 hour. We have bear div potential, but money flow is looking good. We have, a trigger wave, although it's a pretty deep trigger wave. It's not really tight to the 0 line. It is still showing direction from this anchor wave back here, which, if I am not mistaken, was also a divergence. So that is, kind of a strong sign when you have a divergence and then a continuation of direction. So there's bullish signs, but there's also potentially bearish signs with the bear div potential from this high. But the thing that is, still at this point making me lean more bullish, specifically with this 4 hour time frame, is the fact that there's only bear div potential with momentum, not with money flow. Money flow is putting in higher highs. I like to prioritize divergences with momentum and money flow, and when you're only seeing a divergence with momentum, I view it as a less strong one. Let's take a look at the 3 hour, and this looks pretty similar. We had the divergences on the low right here. We have direction with this trigger wave. Again, it's a very deep one, but here the difference is that we have divergence potential with momentum and money flow. So if this ends up being a failed attempt at this high, if we end up like SFPing it, or even like barely closing above it, and then we start falling back down below the value area low, there's a pretty strong chance that we see some pretty strong looking divergences on the 3 hour. And something to keep in mind here, even though the 4 hour time frame will print a new candle in 1 minute and 5 seconds, the 3 hour will not for another 2 hours after that. So it could be, a close technically on the 4 hour, but we still could fall back down below this high and close a 3 hour candle as an SFP. And even though I like to prioritize the higher time frames over the lower time frames, when they're this close, it's the 3 hour and the 4 hour, those are very similar time frames in my opinion, then I would probably look at the 3 hour as, almost as important, if not just as important as the 4 hour close. So really, I would not only like to see a 4 hour close above this high right here, but also a 3 hour one. And if it's a 4 hour close and a 3 hour SFP, well, it is the 3 hour time frame that has the double div potential here. The 4 hour does not. So maybe I would even prioritize the 3 hour over the 4 hour. The 2 hour time frame, same deal. We have the double div potential here. It looks like even possibly multiple drives of momentum divs, starting from all the way back here. We originally had a divergence as we first got up to the value area low, and now we have potential to print another one. And the first one, when we came up to value area low, was only a div with momentum. It was not with money flow. Money flow put in its highest point, but that may have changed here. money flow retraced significantly. It is just now getting back into the green, and I think that if this ends up being a failed attempt at breaking above the value area low, if we fall back down below it, there's a very strong chance that we see the divergences continue with momentum and that we get a very bearish looking divergence with money flow. And the 1 hour time frame is also showing some bearish looking signs, I have to say. It is not showing any div potential with momentum. Seems like momentum is looking to put in a higher high right now, so we're challenging this last high, which this correlates to this high back here, the high that we saw the divergences start from on the 2 hour. The difference here, though, is that we only really have div potential with money flow, and the money flow divs actually started from this point, which is different from the 2 hours. So we already had money flow divs here, and we could potentially see that continue. So all in all, I'm seeing, a lot of divs across many time frames as we are challenging a very important point. And I think we could definitely overrule those divs if price gets a significant close, if we continue pumping to the upside here. If we're able to sustain price above the value area low, there's a good chance that money flow continues to move to the upside on a lot of time frames, and we may be able to avoid a lot of those divergences. Like I said, I do think that breaking above this value area low gives us a pretty decent chance at rotating to the upside in this range. I would be looking at this high as my next target, but at this point, I think it's unclear whether or not we're going to do that. So yeah, for right now, I'm just watching price action. I am not in any trades at the moment. I really haven't been doing much trading recently. I just got back to the charts, really. Let's take a look at that 4 hour because it has now closed. We do have, technically a break on the 4 hour, a break above this high, which I think is the first step to, kind of showing that we are breaking above the value area low. But again, I am still watching that 3 hour. I think if we start retracing now and that 3 hour closes back down here or even, below this high, that would make me feel less confident in us continuing to the upside. And I think if that happens, if we end up SFPing this high on the 3 hour, and if we start losing the value area low once again, I'm probably going to start looking for local short setups. I'm not just going to short this as soon as we lose value area low. I don't think I'm going to do that. Risk reward does not exactly look great. I mean, even down to the low of this local range or targeting this daily level, it's only a 2-to-1. That's not really great. So I would prefer to look for something locally, but yeah, I think in that scenario, I would be looking for local short setups. And if we are able to, successfully break above this point, if we close a 3 hour candle, ideally higher than we close the 4 hour candle, I'd like to see, a continued pump here, maybe close the 3 hour candle up here and then start retracing. I would certainly be looking around this value area low for confluence and looking for longs there. I don't know what confluence will be there, but we are still pretty far away from that. I would like to see price, continue to the upside for a while before retracing, and from there, we'll have to see where the fib level's at, where's the volume levels at. I'm not going to spend too much time, refining ideas at the moment because I don't know, number one, if I'm even going to look for longs here, and two, I don't know what price is going to look like by the time that we actually confirm or invalidate that idea. I'd like to, again, see more bullish price action before I start looking for longs on a retrace. Alright, I think that's it for this video. Just want to kind of do a quick update and give my higher time frame thoughts. I think this is a very important moment right here, so I'm very interested to see how this turns out. Alright, thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, consider leaving a like, subscribing to the channel, and leaving a comment. All of that helps to support my channel, and I appreciate it a lot. Shout out to everybody who has been watching, liking, subscribing, commenting, all that. It means a lot. I really do appreciate it. And I will see you all in the next one.